What's that? Oh, the mic's on. Call meeting.
Test, test.
We'll get Sarah over here.
Looks like when you're ready to talk, you can turn on your microphone. But you don't have to do it in the meantime. Let him get to the back closet. Let the tech guy get into a seat before you start talking.
How do you know?
Closet.
He's got to start the video.
I'll say that.
Maybe closet wasn't the appropriate word. Okay, I'm
It is.
sorry.
You're right.
It's a small room.
Same.
We'll give him 15 seconds.
That should be plenty of time.
Okay, let's start. This is the meeting of the Transportation Commission of the City of Albany, and today is 25th of September, 2025. So, Commissioner Kerr, would you like to read the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lisjan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Okay, thank you. So let me just read the brief commission purpose. The Transportation Commission advises the City Council on transportation policy and public planning and design on the city-owned right-of-way. Our next agenda item is public comment. There's no physically present audience members. Are there any online?
There are not.
Okay, moving right along. Let's introduce our new commission member now. Anthony is a senior at Albany High School. He lives in University Village, where his mom is a graduate student. And Anthony, so tell us more about yourself.
Hi, my name is Anthony. I grew up in SoCal. I recently moved here about 2 years ago for my mom to pursue college. I've been attending Albany High. I transferred when I was a sophomore mid-year. It was pretty easy to grow up here. The community is very accepting. It was very nice. And I've just been here ever since. And I've recently wanted to get into supporting my community, making a difference. And this is a way I think I can make a difference.
Great. Well, thank you and
Welcome.
We'll keep you busy. Next item is consent calendar. Does anyone on the council like to pull any of the items on the consent calendar?
You're promoting us to council?
Well, you're a council, but, all right, the commission. I'm seeing no one.
Thanks anyway.
How about anyone in the audience? Anyone out there want to pull any consent items?
Nope.
Second?
Sure.
I think that's a yes. We need to call the roll on.
We'll do roll call, and this can serve
Sure,
as
why not?
as the
We-
starting roll call, which we forgot. So, Commissioner Hiley,
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr, Commissioner McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ugalde,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba, and serving as Chair Barnes.
Aye.
Commissioner Javendel is absent.
Okay, moving right along. Commission item number 4-1, Cleveland Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation and Bikeway Project Design. Staff will present detailed design plans for the Cleveland Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation and Bikeway Project.
Thank you.
If I may interrupt briefly, it's warm in here, so I opened up the back door the outside, so if it gets noisy or if it, for some reason, gets too cold, then we can close the door.
For this item, we have a consultant joining us for this presentation, or this discussion item that I will bring up to panelist on Zoom, and I will work on pulling up our presentation. Great, thank you, Chair and Commission. We are presenting on the Cleveland Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation and Bikeway Project Design. And with me tonight is Allison Carrillo, as well as, I'll let you introduce our consultant and introduce the project.
Good evening. I'm Allison Carrillo. I'm the CIP Program Manager at the City of Albany's Public Works Department. Joining us tonight is Emma Schonthal, who is the consultant leading the Cleveland Avenue Pavement and Bikeway project. So she'll be joining us to answer questions, kind of brainstorm if there's anything we want to talk about, and generally being our kind of subject matter expert tonight. So I think I'll start maybe with kind of the location, the impetus, how we got this project limits. Followed by Justin will give some history on kind of the transportation elements that have previously been presented at this commission, just to bring everyone up to speed. It's been a few years. And then I'll follow up with a general overview and then open it up to general comments and questions. So with that, this project was initiated under the annual street rehabilitation program. This is a program that is intended for maintenance and preserving the condition of the city streets. It also includes ADA curb ramps, minor storm drain work occasionally, as well as safety improvements. We also review other plans for work in the right-of-way as part of project initiation to determine if there's additional considerations that we need to balance in design of the project. So in this case, this is Cleveland Avenue between the I-80 overpass, which is right around where the Saha development is, just north of Washington Avenue, and it goes all the way down to Buchanan Street, where the two spurs are to either side of the Buchanan overcrossing. And as I mentioned, we do look at other kind of local needs and priorities, and the Pierce Street Path project was identified as one that overlapped in location with the paving project. So I'll let Justin take on from here. Oh.
So in our active transportation plan, the Pierce Street Path was a highest priority, priority 0 project. The first segment to the north or to the left on this slide was constructed, I think, soon after the completion of the plan. And Pierce Street Path Segment 2 continues along where the current path terminates through either along Pierce or through some Caltrans-owned right-of-way through the parcel of land owned by the city that has Pierce Street Park in it, and then comes down to where the Saha housing project, Verona Hill, constructed a segment there last year, and then joins there at Cleveland Avenue, where this project is looking at continuing that connection down to the Buchanan Bikeway. So it's all part of this segment 2. It's been being delivered opportunistically in these different segments. This commission recommended we seek grant funding, and we have some planning early design funding that was awarded to the city for the Pierce Cleveland Bikeway Connection project. So that work will be kicking off shortly, and we'll be starting to have discussions around that with the commission. This project is further along. This is the design phase and is programmed for construction.
So kind of meshing of these two projects together has happened various ways, or these types of projects together has happened in various ways. As I mentioned earlier, the annual street rehabilitation program really focuses on street condition. It's not intended to be an enhancement or a building of new facilities, major enhancements and building of new facilities. And so outside of the required ADA curb ramps and kind of safety measures that are needed to maintain the existing kind of street, the funding for new facilities really does need to find outside sources of funding, whether that's outside of the program or outside of the city. And so, as Johnson mentioned, we've had various kind of grant programs that we've been looking for funding for, and we're happy to say that we have $515K that we received from Alameda CTC earlier this year, and this is intended for construction of the bikeway components of the project. And so this is to supplement the annual street rehabilitation program and create, it's actually developed as a separate CIP project in our recent CIP update in order for us to be able to track the two projects together or separately, but ultimately they're getting delivered under one construction project. As mentioned, we also had the Pierce-Cleveland Bikeway Connection. That's the portion through Pierce Street Park, and we have a $300K grant that's been awarded from MTC, so we're happy to start working on that soon. So before diving into the project details, just kind of talking through what our schedule is on this project. So for tonight, we're looking to kind of finalize comments to draft plans. Often we come to you with slightly more developed plans, but it's been a few years and we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to run through everything. This is the first time we're showing detailed plans. I think the last time was more of a conceptual design of the bikeway specifically. And kind of separate or different than we normally do, this is more, again, a draft level plan. So you'll see things that we have kind of commented on in the past that haven't been sent back to Emma. And the reason we're doing that tonight is we usually end up spending a few different iterations, and we really wanted to see if we could, with this project, if we could shorten that down, get all the comments at one time, and make sure it's complete, and we can vet through anything that comes in here before finalizing and sending it over to designers for detailed kind of implementation. Right now, the plan is to return this coming summer for recommendation to council, with hopefully council approving advertisement in the summer and fall, so we can start construction in winter of 2026. This would mean it's following the Marin paving project, and we're trying to tie this really closely so that we can continue to stay in a paving project of some sort, so we can keep up with our condition and pavement maintenance needs.
So pulling back from, the commission discussed in 2021 various options for a bike facility for this segment along Cleveland Avenue, looked at one direction bike lane with shared facility with cyclists and motor vehicles in the other versus a two-way separated bikeway, and the commission recommended proceeding with the two-way separated bikeway. This is a bikeway on the west side of the street, and so the connection points are on the east, to the east side of the street, so there are two crossing locations that will have to be navigated to access to and from the bikeway, but it has no driveway crossings, no cross-street crossings, and so the preference was to really maintain that separation. But we'll focus a little bit of your attention on those crossings. We've taken some time to work on making sure those are safe crossings, but looking for additional comment on that. And running quickly through some of the comments and follow-up items from the earlier conceptual discussion, there was a fair bit of discussion on the travel lane widths and the AC transit service. At the time, the 80 was suspended. but the route took from Pier Street to Solano to Cleveland to get onto Buchanan. And I think it was actually a holdover from before there was a signal at Pierce and Buchanan to navigate that left. But the part of the discussion was maintaining an 11-foot width so that the 80 service could continue to run on that route. With the AC Transit realigned, the 80 was not reinstated. And as I mentioned, there is a signal now at Pierce and Buchanan, so if there was service brought back on Pierce needing to make the left onto Buchanan, presumably that would be an option. But at the end of it, it's really where the center line is, so it's not a huge project impact if there were, down the road changes that need to be made to the lane widths. It doesn't really affect the rest of the design. But what you're seeing tonight maintains 10 feet in both directions because we don't have the bus need, and we didn't have fire department support for going below 10 feet travel lane width, even in the northbound direction. There was also discussion about making sure that the bus could navigate the left turn from Solano onto Cleveland. We did analyze that, and the bus movement could be facilitated just with utilizing the buffer, the 2-foot buffer, and just not having any vertical delineator posts in that zone making that left. So if that does become an issue, it would still be able to navigate that turn without needing to adjust the bike facility widths. The consultant also recommended doing a lighting study to make sure that there's adequate lighting for the on-street facility. We did review the lighting with what was established in the citywide street lighting evaluation and have found that it is adequate lighting along that stretch with the existing lighting, with a couple of exceptions that need to be assessed. One, north of Washington and where the crossing is from the Saha across the street, and then again south at the crossing back to the Buchanan Spur. So those are the two spots we're going to take a closer look at. And then finally, we have had some comments come in, I believe, to the commission and to staff on the safety concerns around the Solano-Cleveland intersection and vehicles taking relatively fast speeds of that left turn and traveling quickly on Solano Avenue. So this will have a traffic calming effect. This will narrow the travel lanes along the stretch. But we will also be looking at some truck route signage and other intersection treatments that might be able to be applied to here before finalizing, but also interested in commission feedback on that item.
All right, so I'm jumping in to provide a little bit more context on some of the civil design efforts that were kind of identified coming out of the conceptual design process. So the bikeway is located in what we call a major overland flow channel. So it's taking significant overland flow from the side of Albany Hill, about a fifth of Albany Hill actually drains down through there. And so we wanted to make sure that the bikeway is usable even in wet weather. Additionally, on the pedestrian sidewalks and ramps, we've had kind of, with other projects, some drainage considerations that we wanted to implement here. And so we took a look at all of these things, and what we're looking at is extending a storm drain up from the intersection of Cleveland and Buchanan, and bringing that through so we can take care of both an existing valley gutter that is going to make the curb ramp design very challenging along from Solano to Buchanan, as well as the bikeway. And so some of that grant funding is supporting the bikeway components of the stormwater as well. I think there's going to be a little bit more we can speak to a little later, but it really is trying to take care of the drainage.
There's a visual.
Thank you. So I think we're going to be diving into the kind of current design. So the project as a whole right now includes paving, the bikeway improvements, RFBs. These are kind of part of that bikeway design. We have curb ramps, storm drains, and striping and signage improvements. So I took, unfortunately, my blue color and my purple aren't showing up real well on the screen, but the bikeway's in purple at the very bottom. Storm drain is the only alignment we could find, which is all the way across the street. And we're intercepting ahead of curb ramps on major flow channels and taking care of kind of on-street drainage to the extent feasible. One thing I will note, and this was a comment we've received before about bikeways, is trying to make sure that the storm drain is not in the bikeway itself. And so if you notice the purple bikeway line or shaded area, that's where the curb line is. And so the box itself where the drainage is getting captured is an inlet style, so it does not have the grates. So we're definitely looking at trying to keep that bikeway as clear of utilities as we can.
Question, do you anticipate there being flooding? I mean, the water backing up when it goes into that inlet?
That's always a maintenance concern. Right now, where actually specifically where this photo is, or this screenshot is, there is a grate right around where that box is, just in the roadway itself, but it isn't an inlet, it's actually an outlet. So right now, water comes down Solano Avenue into a box and exits there, and then flows down the street. And so that was another thing we wanted to take care of, is not having that kind of situation, because that's a larger maintenance nightmare. Because, yeah.
It's really unusual.
So I'll run through a few of the elements in the design, and we can pull up the plans to go into greater detail for discussion. The current design we're presenting, this is a cross section. It shows on the right-hand side is to the west, the 8-foot bikeway, 2-foot buffer, and then 2 10-foot travel lanes and a 7-foot parking lane, and then the east side sidewalk zone.
I'm sorry, what was the last few words?
The east side sidewalk zone, the sidewalk and planter strip.
We're looking south here.
This is looking south. And then just walking through some of the signing and striping plan pages. This is showing where the bikeway adjacent to Saha meets Cleveland. And so we're looking at a curb extension and a physical island, raised curb island as part of the lane shift for southbound vehicle traffic for the start of the bikeway to really focus on slower speeds and attention to the crossing and making it as navigable of a jog there for going from the path along the Saha property across and then into the bikeway adjacent to Cleveland here. And then as it comes to other cross streets, we're looking at the facilitating entering and exiting the bikeway, as well as the curb ramp and pedestrian improvements adjacent to the paving. Similarly at Solano. Then south to Johnson Street, and then navigating the curve. And then here needs to make the connection to where the Buchanan Bikeway crosses Pierce and could access the overcrossing or crossing to continue east on the Buchanan Bikeway adjacent to this here. So really east of here, it's basically a dead end, low volume, just a few cars, but we do occasionally get reports of folks not familiar with the change that was made a while ago, or not really recognizing that that isn't a street that continues. So this is also showing here a raised island that can be a little more prominent, that the main travel for southbound vehicles is really to continue under Buchanan, overcrossing and to the signal versus proceeding straight east here. And with that, we can pull up the plans and speak to more specifics. I don't know if you had anything else, Allison, before we open it up to questions from the commission.
Yeah, I have a question. On that same slide, did you guys consider putting a stop sign at, I guess, kind of like the northbound of Buchanan Avenue, where the blue triangles currently are? Does that description make sense at all? Basically, like, yeah, where the truck traffic will be coming out.
There's very little traffic coming north here. It's really just exit from the Department of Agriculture. It reads as a regular lane, but really that's the only folks that can exit there. It's really serving one-way truck traffic southbound to East Buchanan Avenue. So we have been toying with ideas, so open to ideas on how to make sure it's a safe crossing. I don't think the northbound traffic would be the concern here. It's really trying to make sure that there's compliance with the southbound vehicle traffic.
Do you know, like, order of magnitude what the northbound vehicle volume is? Or, like, comparison?
It's really, I think, only special delivery kind of volume from Department of Agriculture. We've taken counts. Further north. I don't think we've collected right here, but it's really northbound even up to Johnson. Like, it's accessing along the spur to the east is really like 4 or 5 properties, and then Department of Agriculture.
Okay, just so I'm absolutely clear on this, because this is not quite the same as the one in our package. Where is the USDA center? Is it it's on the bottom, to the right?
That's correct.
I can pull up the plan sheets, but yes, it's to the south.
I have a question on sheet C 6.2. It's in your slideshow. It's showing the crossing at the north edge of the cycle track over to the property in front of Verana Hill, the low-income housing project. I'm wondering if that happens south of the garage or north of the garage?
That happens north of the garage.
North of the garage. Okay, great. I looked at Street View, and it's still a grassy knoll.
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
There's nobody there.
I have a general question about just sort of titling of things. This is described as a bikeway project, and there's some $0.8 million involved. Does that same amount of money apply for the pedestrian improvements, or is the bike exclusively using the funding for the bikeway exclusive to the funding for this?
So right now, the estimated project cost is about $1.5 million, and about $500,000, just over $500,000, was identified as related to the bikeway specifically. The pavement program, the annual street rehabilitation program, does incorporate ADA curb ramp improvements, and those are part of the paving program. They're required by ADA, and when we pave through intersections, we're required to make sure that the ramps are up to either the current standards, if they haven't been upgraded before, or if they've been updated in the past since passage of the ADA, that it met the ADA requirements at the time. Often those were less clear, and so we often end up saying there's a kind of better ramp that we can put out there.
So is it accurate to say that the funding that we're talking about tonight is exclusive for the bikeway?
You know, Tonight, we're talking about both projects.
Both
And so we're going to be delivering them in concert in order to make sure, to have one contractor do both scopes.
Yeah.
But in the CIP, they fall under two different capital improvement.
I understand now. Okay, thank you.
Questions? Any more? I have a question. Just because I happened to drive by there recently, well, let me say, a few years ago, the idea was the north end of the Saha Center was going to have to be some sort of switchbacks to get up that very steep grade up to the park. Is that still the plan? And is that going to be part of this plan?
So that's not part of this project, that's part of the other project that we really briefly touched on that's going through the Pier Street Park. That will be the park portion, the switchbacks, and the connection to the first segment of Pier Street Path.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the audience?
Open for public comment on this item. Please use the raise your hand feature if you wish to comment on this. Not seeing a raised hand.
Okay, bringing it back to council for comments.
I'd like to start. I considered specifically the intersections, crossing, off of the side street onto and off of the bikeway, and some items that I identified as being challenging for bikers are the hard right turn that the bollard spacing requires. So one of my suggestions would be to eliminate some of those bollards. I understand the spacing tightens up in the middle. To probably try to direct traffic to one side or the other. But as it appears, I think that right turn would be really pretty difficult. A biker would have to slow down a lot to try to make that turn. And the way that it's currently configured, if you're coming off of the bikeway, you'll be slowing down in the bike path. And then even if you're coming onto the bikeway, you're slowing down in our traffic to try to make that turn.
Which location are you talking about?
Oh, any of the intersections.
So we're going to bring up some of the diagrams that I think
Great.
you sent in,
Thanks.
so it makes it a little easier to kind of visualize.
Thank you. I did some little markups. Hard to describe. Thanks, Allison.
And Emma, I think this is probably where you're going to shine, is answering some of these questions and brainstorming.
Oh, great. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. So, yes, a challenge I thought about would be, like I said, coming on and off. And so some ideas would be to include like a shoulder or a turn box, if you will. One option would be a 4-foot box. This would be taking the 2 feet from the bollard buffer zone and adding 2 more feet. What this does is ends up sweeping the car traffic lanes over. So that also added side benefit to that is additional traffic calming measures. That's done. An example of where this is currently being done is in Berkeley on MLK Way, just after Dwight. It kind of picks up if you're going south of Dwight. So that serves, Slalom course, it serves to slow traffic. And like Justin mentioned before, the lane width of 10 feet will also help to calm traffic. But I mean, to refer it to our current ATP that we're developing or the future, which I know is just in draft, but we have identified this as a proposed high comfort network for all ages and abilities. The current speed that's available, that would mean a protected bikeway, but we did mention in the memo that that's not feasible because of, or an off-street bikeway is not feasible. So another way to get a NACDO, all ages and abilities, high comfort network is to reduce speed to 25 miles an hour. So the lane sweeping would help to reduce traffic speed. It gives us a nice turn lane here. And then the other, I was kind of thinking where it goes towards the crosswalk, that area is already a no parking zone with the red curb. So we're not impeding on parking spots as far as I can tell. And then the last suggestion would be to have some kind of arrows on the bikeway to indicate which way you should be turning, either on or off for each of those crossings.
So when you say right-hand turn, are you concerned about coming downhill on Washington and making the right-hand turn to the north, or making the right-hand turn from the bikeway to go uphill on Washington, or both?
Both. More concerned with turning onto the bikeway from one of the side streets because it requires, either way, when you're turning on or off, you're going to have to slow down to make that right angle. Why I'm more concerned with turning onto the bike path is because that would require you to slow down in car traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Washington especially, but also Solano is quite steep there, is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm kind of making this suggestion for every intersection, just marked it up on Washington, for example.
Want to show the other images?
Well, the other one was just in case no one took to the sweeping idea. Less ideal because it's not as big of a turn lane and it doesn't offer benefits of traffic calming, but just kind of turning this section of the buffer zone into a, I guess, mini turning shoulder kind of thing. And then these are just examples of where this is kind of being done in the Embarcadero in Washington and San Francisco. We share the same cross street name, so that's a good sign. And then on the right is just the sweeping on MLK in Berkeley.
So, Emma, do you mind kind of speaking to some of the things she's brought up? I think we probably need some review. I did want to add one more thing about compliance around striping, because people tend to just drive right over striping rather than following it, and making sure that whatever improvements, if we're doing something along these lines, is there room to make sure there's some kind of hardened, or like what we would need to make sure that there's compliance with these kinds of lane movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. I did take a look at this before this meeting, and I do think it's a good idea. I would actually suggest being a little bit more, reach a little bit further and actually have a 6-foot wide turn box. I think we do have the room to shift the striping over. But I do think this could be one potential idea we consider for navigating those right turns on and off the cycle track. I am also in agreement with Allison. I think we do still need some sort of vertical feature, whether that be a couple of bollards between the two crossings, or just something to dissuade vehicles from, I don't know, for some reason going into the bike lane, or people coming down that hill going too fast. If they see that bollard, maybe that would dissuade them from going towards the curb any further. So definitely there will need to be some sort of vertical element or other element to dissuade vehicles from entering the cycle track at those crossings. I do like that last photo showing the San Francisco example with the two arrows and the bike symbol. I I think that would be very clear for bicyclists and vehicles alike, to very much clarify what the intention is for those movements in this sort of non-standard setting.
Can we go back to that picture?
Thanks, Emma and Allison.
So
One
thing
of the Embarcadero?
can I, if you don't mind, one thing is about any kind of median treatments, if it's a medium treatment, is we really would want to talk to fire, because that has been something that's come up for their access. So, we'll have to workshop.
This is right by the Exploratorium, right? On the Embarcadero.
It's just north of the ferry building.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just went through that crosswalk about a week ago. I'm trying to remember what the traffic was like. It seems to work there. Any other comments?
I guess I just have one comment regarding Allison's, regarding the proposal that's been outlined. The bikes coming down the hill there are going to be coming down at a pretty good clip, and they will be entering a crosswalk. And I think the bollards to slow down the bicycles is a good idea, because I think there will be a tendency for people to walk off of that crosswalk without necessarily hearing a bike down the hill at probably 15 or 20 miles an hour, or maybe more, I don't know. But I would want pedestrians to be included in the thinking of how to make that safe.
I want to thank staff and consultants for the iterations that we're seeing in the plans, especially the stop sign added on Buchanan and the island. I think that's a great solution for making that space a little more rational and supporting the crossing of cyclists there. And I don't have a strong opinion about moving the traffic lanes, but I was struck by the fact that the green dashed cycle crossing sections kind of look like they're in the space where you would expect a crosswalk. And I think we want to separate those from the idea of a crosswalk. And I would actually move them towards the center and perhaps have a bike logo and a directional arrow to reinforce that. Also, if you're a cyclist, you're coming down Johnson, for example, and you want to cross to the cycle track, and maybe turn left. You don't want to have to go right to get to the crossing, and then turn left. That's really distracting if you're a motorist or even a pedestrian who's trying to figure out what a cyclist is doing. I think that doesn't make a lot of sense. I would love to see them more towards the center of the lanes at the intersections. Bollards are an issue as vertical objects when you're turning, agreed. I think there could be a balance of taking out some bollards, but I would love to see the cycle track painted green along the intersection to reinforce that that's not a place for other vehicles to enter. And as a pedestrian looking across, you're not thinking, oh, I can go there too. I have to bring up, because I'm the drone, it's Railroad Safety Month. And there is no fence between this cycle track and the railroad tracks. There is a fence on the west side of the tracks. It's often compromised. There's a steady trail across of people not going up to the Buchanan overpass on foot. We've been very lucky in Albany. We've only had one death in the last 10 years or so along the railroad tracks, but there have been a couple deaths a year in the surrounding communities of Berkeley, Richmond, et cetera. So we can't be complacent. I will be bringing up reinforcing the fence on the west side in other projects. But I just want to get that out there as usual.
So your concern is that people will, say, coming down Johnson Street to the west, they will misinterpret the cycle track as being part of the street and then accidentally keep going and roll down onto the railroad tracks?
No. I'm concerned that the green dashed lines from east to west in the intersection look like a crosswalk.
Oh, if I may jump in, that is one of the things we wanted to workshop with Emma, is outside of at the intersections with the roadways, also at the crossing at Saha, because that is an extension of a shared use trail, and then we're switching to a kind of a bike-only crossing, and so looking at ways to make sure that doesn't look like an ADA crosswalk. And so that's part of the things we want to workshop over the next month or so, and really dial in on, and I think this is hand in hand with that discussion, what you just brought up.
Great. Yeah, the one at the Saha crossing is much closer together. I think that with some directional arrows in there, I think that reads much better as a green cycle crossing. This project will not produce a through path, but at some point in the future, we'll have a shared sidewalk area in front of Saha. Are there any plans for markings or wayfinding to get to the next leg, or some kind of indication on the sidewalk to show that it's shared?
We haven't gotten there yet with this, but we have been talking about how to distinguish for a pedestrian on the shared use path. That sidewalk is where you go for the cyclist. Continuing across the street is where you go, and making sure that's clear and legible. So that's something that we do need to look more in detail at.
Front door of the development does open right into that area, so that I think that'll be important. Obviously, we don't want to put that up before we have a through path. In general, I think we spent a lot of time talking about the crossings at the streets, but in the long run, I don't expect a lot of cyclist traffic on those streets. The path hopefully will be a better way to get along the corridor, and just local people will be connecting there. So I don't see that as a high use, but it's still important. Lighting is still under evaluation. I think that's a great way to support both cyclists and walkers. And Judy, do you have any ideas of how this plan could better support pedestrians in this area?
No, I think the points that have been raised are all very good, so I appreciate it.
Sorry?
I think the points that have been raised are very useful, so I appreciate your comments.
Cool. Great. Those are my comments. Thank you.
I don't quite understand where Buchanan Avenue and Buchanan Street, that whole intersection area, the flow of the bicycles and the pedestrians, and like where are they crossing, especially the area where there's the kind of that on-ramp to the pedestrian crossing and the loop to go over the railroad tracks and then under the freeway. You know, that path that kind of goes up. How can you provide more?
Yeah, let me pull up the plan sheet that goes a little farther than what was on the visual I showed on the slide.
Yeah, I was looking at, I don't know what number this is.
But it doesn't show the connection points, but I can maybe walk through it.
Yeah, that was what I was looking at. So how?
The main point of connection here is where the street has a ramp connection, and then right over here is So coming from the overcrossing down or up is right parallel to this. Both come here and you're right here at the crossing, signalized crossing to get south
So
across.
that's like where pedestrians and bikes are all on the sidewalk going different directions.
Yep. Yes, and we on the staff side know that there's, have flagged some desires for future changes at that interchange, especially when this connection is complete and through, because you do have cyclists coming from several different approaches, as well as pedestrians all sharing a very tight space there. We're focused on the on-street portion here, but we have noted that intersection needs another look as these various components are coming to it.
Perfect, thanks.
So I guess the one thing I'm seeing now looking at this is that if I'm a cyclist and I'm going westbound on the Buchanan stub, it looks like I actually have to cross over into oncoming traffic to go along the dashed line. That's not a high volume of traffic driving up there, so that's probably not a huge exposure. Maybe a little disconcerting.
That might be something where you can look at the width of that green kind of crossing indication so that you're more fully within some kind of envelope. Right now it matches the width of the path, but maybe Emma can talk to this a little bit, but I mean, in my head you're coming, and it might be just a wider that narrows down like a taper of some sort. Just so that visually you know where you're going. It seems like a little bit of wayfinding, just given the volumes we're talking about here.
A little more consideration would be great. Yeah. Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to mention, so as far as safety, I think there may be some additional efforts we can make to make it a little bit clearer for westbound traffic on that spur. Like you mentioned, there's, I think, maybe 3 or 4 residences in that area, so very low volume of traffic, but definitely worth considering how we can clarify the movements for westbound traffic there.
Cool. Like I said, I'm really in favor of the island. I would hate to see that reduced. So this as a default is not a problem for me, conceptually. But if there's a way to improve it a bit, that would be great.
I would suggest, I know I asked it as a question too, but throwing in a stop sign for the northbound lane. I'm not sure what kind of analysis needs to be done for that, but even though it's a low volume of traffic coming out of there, visibility is kind of poor under the underpass. They could be coming out pretty fast, making the turn, ready to just whip around right into the bike lane. So wondering if a stop sign would just slow that down. What are you thinking, Ken?
I guess I'm on it's kind of a convoluted area with a low clearance or a low head clearance perception. I don't think I've ever encountered a vehicle coming the other direction in my 25, 26 years of driving in Albany. And because of that turn, I think you have to slow down quite a bit anyway.
Naturally. Okay.
Yeah.
So just the geometry of it is slowing.
I believe so.
So that section of Buchanan Avenue that goes under Buchanan Street, that will be like a one direction, like a sharrow that leads over and where people can reconnect to the two-way south side path. Is that right? Or what is that section?
Yeah, so the facility, the
That kind of, this plan ends there.
The lower stress facility is really the crossing north to the signalized crossing.
Okay.
But we recognize that there is a subset of folks who, when the decision is to wait for the signal or to join the motor vehicle traffic and go south under the undercrossing, merging with traffic, it's just basically a queue for the eastbound
Right.
green signal that
Then they can
folks
turn right and
connect
get on there.
to the path. It's not designed for that, but and that's not what we're encouraging folks to do here. But that's what the sharrows are to
Got it, yeah.
give notice that there is some sharing of the motor vehicle lane there.
Yeah, so then if both directions are going to be on Buchanan Avenue, then it even becomes more important on that corner.
So
Figure that out.
that corner is one of the intersections that are being looked at under the, well, and it's not an active project right now, but the Buchanan Complete Streets, which was phase 3 of the San Pablo San Pablo Complete Streets project. That kind of configuration and understanding that area was part of that project. And given the interactions with the signals and the bridge, it's really one that I think is going to take a little bit more work than what we can accomplish under this paving program-led project.
Yeah, I appreciate the bike signs on there acknowledging that it will be the higher stress option, but I appreciate that you've acknowledged some people would prefer or choose that route, and then there will be the bike symbols there for those people. So thanks for considering that.
How are we doing? Any other issues? Ben? You guys get enough information there? Oh, yes. Everybody out in the audience and Internet.
We opened it for public
We did.
comment before you went to the discussion, so I think you're good on public.
okay.
The only thing I'm going to add is that curb ramps is our initial layouts. So we are going through and providing comment to Emma. And if there's following kind of our curb ramp design guidelines that went through this commission last year, if there's anything that kind of needs a little more discussion because it doesn't follow kind of the preferences expressed in the guidelines, we would bring it back to this commission at our next meeting or before that to kind of talk through the trade-offs and kind of figure out a best path forward.
Okay. So if there are no other concerns, then let's move on to the next agenda item, which will be item 4.2, bicycle parking standards. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I am going to talk about bicycle parking administrative regulations tonight. So just a quick summary of the goals of these administrative regulations and the ordinance that was adopted by City Council earlier this month is to encourage cycling and support climate and sustainability in the process, to better integrate bike parking into public and private space, to reduce the parking and land use conflicts, and to set clear standards without overburdening development, which we would like to see, a balance there. Background here is that I'll go a little bit farther back. Is there was parking requirement changes that happened in November 2023, and as part of those changes, which was essentially an elimination of parking minimums for vehicles, there was a thought that we should also reconsider bike parking requirements throughout the city. And so as part of that discussion, this was brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission in May of 2025 as part of a study session. So there was some brainstorming that went on about what new bike parking requirements might look like. Those were formalized into an ordinance, an updated ordinance, and then a set of administrative regulations which would complement the ordinance, and brought to Planning and Zoning in July of this year, which passed out of the Planning and Zoning Commission with modifications, and then those were summarily brought to City Council earlier this month, and then passed a second reading on the 15th. So the ordinance piece of this has already been adopted by City Council, and we are now just kind of talking about and providing feedback on tonight the administrative regulations, which are kind of the details, the nitty-gritty of kind of like of the ordinance, which would be overseen by the Community Development Department. So just kind of breaking down a little bit of what the ordinance changes did accomplish, which again, we're not discussing tonight. They expanded applicability in general to commercial, public and quasi-public space, industrial spaces, and mixed use and multifamily developments. The previous ordinance only was applicable to multifamily residents, mixed-use developments, and limited commercial space. They exempt bike parking from floor area ratio calculations, which the previous ordinance did not do. There were ratio updates for the various land uses where there hadn't been, or there had been lower ratios prior. And then the e-bike and cargo bike number of spaces required, which is was extended throughout the city, which was limited to San Pablo Avenue in the previous ordinance. So, and then, sorry, and finally, temporary events were also added into the ordinance. So just kind of establishing some bicycle parking requirements for temporary events. So that was kind of what the ordinance accomplished, and we will dive into the draft administrative regulations now. So kind of just generally speaking here, these are, again, kind of the getting into the nitty-gritty and the details and complementing the ordinance through kind of more detailed description of what the requirements might be, covering more of kind of design, materials, placement, and compliance, which the ordinance doesn't touch on as much. And then, but just to note, these are still requirements for project approval, and will be updated periodically to reflect best practices, but again, overseen by the Community Development Department, so we don't have to go through the more onerous process of going through a whole ordinance change, which has to go through City Council and go through 2 readings, et cetera. I should also note that the ordinance and subsequent administrative regulations really only touch on new construction, private development. This is really not there are requirements for putting bike parking, short-term parking in public space, but it's really for, the trigger is when new developments are coming into existence, which is why I went through the Planning and Zoning Commission. The exception to that, I would say, in the context of the administrative regulations that you all received, are temporary events. So temporary events is kind of the one piece of this where it kind of extends beyond private development. So applicability, I just kind of went through that. So this is really for new developments, for temporary events, and then it also kind of relates to signage and amenity requirements to complement the parking itself in those new developments or at temporary events. In terms of location standards, this is kind of getting into some of the details that were covered in the staff memo and in the administrative regulations themselves. So short-term, the short-term parking that would be required for private developments would have to be within 50 feet of main entrances of those new developments. They would have to be visible, well-lit, and unobstructed clearances with 6 feet of kind of unobstructed space in commercial areas and 4 feet elsewhere. In terms of long-term bike parking, they would be indoor and covered with no stairs or vertical lifting for the parking, and then have continuous safe aisles with direct access. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different bike parking requirements out there in the world, and different cities do it different ways. And this is kind of a consolidation of the best practices, as we could tell. But the standard space for a bike parking space, regular bike parking space, is 2 feet wide by 6 feet long, with 7 feet of vertical clearance, or 8 feet of vertical clearance if it's a vertical bike rack or a double-decker bike rack. And then large parking spaces would be 3 by 10 feet with no lifting required. Those spaces, again, is kind of the 20% of required spaces.
Is this just for long-term parking?
This is long-term. Okay. And then a 5-foot minimum maneuvering aisle between the rows. And then charging capable spaces would also have to fit both standard and large bicycles. I need to remember what the percentage was, or if it was just kind of a rough, there needs to accommodate large bicycles as well as standards, but I will fact check myself in a minute. In terms of design and materials, there were some recommendations in the administrative regulations recommending steel tubing and square steel tubing and corrosion resistant finishes, not requiring, but recommending for both maintenance and security purposes. Short-term racks would be at the ground level with minimal lifting, and long-term racks would be in covered or indoor facilities and be weather protected. Going back to security, all racks would have to be anchored with 2 points of contact for the bikes at the racks, and U-lock compatible. They would have to be in locked or authorized access areas. And there was a concern about chain link fences not being secure. So for long-term parking, if it is kind of secured by a chain link fence, they would be monitored and at all times and well lit. And then in terms of acceptable facilities, bike rooms, lockers, and closed structures. I just mentioned that. Signage and visibility. Facilities must be signed per MUTC municipal per MUTCD standards, which is kind of the national standard for signage. E-bike charging spaces would have to be visibly marked so that folks would know where to put their e-bikes. And then just generally signage should guide users to long-term bike parking facilities and make it easy to get there. Commuter amenities, there's a requirement for 1 shower per 50 employees for new businesses and private changing areas adjacent to those facilities, and meeting accessibility and non-discrimination standards, particularly as it pertains to sex and gender. And then for temporary events, for each 1,000 attendees projected to attend at the same time of these events, there would be 1 bike space per 100 attendees required, temporary bike space. These bike spaces would have to be within 1 block of the entrance of the event, monitored and free of charge to patrons, and the bike parking should be advertised in the must be advertised in the marketing materials for the event. And if they're recurring events, there's some data collection requirements for the event organizers. And then I think this goes without saying, but all bike parking and amenities would have to comply with ADA and accessibility standards. And so that's just a quick summary of what the administrative regulations kind of touch upon. Kept it short and sweet. Hopefully you all had a chance to dig into them with a little more detail. In terms of next steps, we're looking for your feedback on the regulations tonight. Again, these would be kind of overseen and published by the Community Development Department and the director. And the regulations will be periodically updated to reflect best practices. I should note that part of the reason that we went to City Council before bringing them to the Transportation Commission was because of state law passed AB 306, which prohibits local jurisdictions from making changes to state building codes, KALB being our state building code, between 2025 and 2031. And if it affects residential changes, and so there's some legal ambiguity there. We wanted to get the ordinance passed through City Council before October 1st, 2025, which is when that deadline was, so that we could make sure that we had the ordinance approved. And so there's also some ambiguity as to whether we can make changes between 2025 and 2031 to these administrative regulations. So as we receive comments from you tonight, we will scramble to update them before October 1st so that we can ensure that we are on stable legal grounds as we make future changes. So that was brought to our attention pretty shortly before the first City Council meeting in September. So we scrambled to make sure that we could update these in a timely manner. And I will, I guess I'll open it up to questions.
I have a question. For the temporary events, how did you come to the number of 1,000 simultaneous attendees to kind of trigger the requirement for, free parking? And I'm asking this because this summer we had bike valet for the summer concerts, and I don't think attendance for those surpassed 1,000. But the bike valet was like pretty full. There was a lot of participation in it. So
This was the ones on Memorial Park, the
Yeah.
Wednesday nights.
yeah, I don't know if any of you noticed, but they had free bike parking, which we utilized, and it was pretty full. And there's also a full bike rack right there by the swimming pool. So
Yeah, again, this is, we're always trying to strike a balance here. This was based on a couple of different existing standards, San Francisco and Oakland's, to name a few. These are actually more, there's a higher requirement for the city of Albany now than there are for San Francisco and Oakland per capita. And, you know, that anecdotal evidence is helpful. There's also the Albany Stroll, which has many, many more attendees, and we don't want to overburden an event like that. And so even thinking about that, like, there may be, you know, which just happened, we have to think about whether we're overburdening the event organizers for the Albany Stroll and developing these standards.
Do you have any data on how many bikes were parked during the Albany Solano Stroll and that bike?
Sorry, Solano Stroll.
Solano Stroll, yeah. Do we have that data? Can you know?
Yeah, we do have the Strollers and Rollers have the data, and it turns out that over time, it's been around, in round numbers, maybe a third of this new requirement, and the
What do you mean by a third of?
third. So the event, when there are 2 bike parking locations, it tends to be in the 400 to 600 bikes parked per event, per Solana Stroll. When there's 1 location, it tends to be in the 300 to 400. Just say the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It tends to be a little higher when there are 2 locations. I don't remember the exact numbers. But the 8F was suggested as a way to historically allow, or to allow events to show historic data to support the level of bike parking that they support, instead of just a random number or you know, a projection that is pulled out of the air. So the intent with the suggestion was to allow established events to show their history instead of just being required to adhere to a number.
If I can interject, Alan Kane of the Solano Avenue Association just sent out an email estimating the total number of people during the whole event. The stroll, which is quite successful, was 150,000 people.
Wow.
So if you cut that in a third and say at any given time on the street there was a third of that amount, which is 50,000 people. The street is 1.2 miles long. You can actually get a lot of people on the street. So if it's 1% of 50,000 people, that's 500 bicycles, which is right in Ken's estimate.
Yeah.
It's in the zone, yeah.
I have a question on, if you go back to the slide where you had a photograph of the, or a schematic of the building and the temporary parking within 50 feet of that.
I'm not sure.
It was one of the earliest ones, within 50 feet, yeah, that one. I had one. So short-term parking within 50 feet of the main entrances is the question that I have about. That's great, but the issue that comes up, and I wonder if we need to address it here, if we would just need to address it project by project, is often that results in people riding on and off sidewalks to access the temporary parking within 50 feet of the main entrance, which can result in a very congested front entrance to a busy building. So is that something that we would want to put in here? Getting into discussion a little bit, but my question, I guess, is there any mention of pedestrian access through these 50-foot short-term parking spaces?
I think pedestrian access is implied just via the fact that there's sidewalk access to the spaces. This is in line with the ordinances and regulations in other cities, comparable cities. But I think it's a worthy discussion if there's some nuance here that we could make more clear or clarify some sort of pedestrian priority or something to that effect.
Right.
So under section,
Point being that that in most instances, you're not supposed to ride on the sidewalk, but because the 50 feet, within 50 feet of the main entrance is on the sidewalk, people are going to ride to it. So that's the point that is, I think, worthy of discussion. But we're just asking questions now, so we could get back to that under discussion.
without discussing it further, I want to point you to 2AV, where the width of the sidewalk is addressed. You might just take a look at that part of the proposed rules.
Sure.
Is there any, in this, does it say how many bike parking spots are required?
Those are in the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Because that would, I think, tie into your question, where if it's just one bike parking, or, like one ring or two
Right, I'm
rings,
assuming it would be a busy spot.
yeah, then oftentimes, then maybe that would be something to include in the ordinance, that it's like separate from the sidewalk, either on the street, or it's like in a different area where it's,
Or simply an expectation that people would dismount to park their bicycles. That's a possibility.
I had another question.
I have a follow-on question.
Yeah, do that. Mine's
Yeah.
not related.
And that's back at 2AV. There's a minimum sidewalk clearance of 6 feet shall be maintained in the Solano Commercial District and 8 feet along San Pablo Avenue. Clearance, and later it says clearance measurements shall include both the bicycle rack and any bicycles parked at it. So it's hard to know what size of bicycle or shape a bicycle is going to be parked at the rack. And we've seen on Solano that many racks get ganged up with a family that comes with multiple bikes. It seems really awkward to legislate. There might be better language. I don't know. Could it instead say clearance measurements shall assume that at least one bike with standard handlebar widths is parked on either side of the rack, or something along those lines? It just seems like having no designation is kind of amorphous.
It could. I think that might be worth bringing up in the discussion. I believe we're still in the question part of the
Fair enough.
the agenda, but I think it's a good suggestion, and I think, I'd be happy to hear a discussion about it.
On that note, do we have any more
Oh,
questions?
I had one more question.
Okay.
For the commuter amenities, where it says all businesses with more than 50 employees located in a newly constructed building, how will that be determined? Like, when the building is going up, some of these buildings have multiple businesses in them. How will you determine the expected number of employees at any given? It's just like, if the building is large, then you're expecting there to be more than 50, and then you would put this in, like it would be part of the building requirements.
It would be part of the building requirements. In terms of anticipating how many employees are in the building, I think it's, this gets into land use zoning, which is not entirely my purview. This has been a collaboration with the Community Development Department, but it's my understanding that when buildings are being built, there is an assumption that X number of employees
Will be in,
are
like each.
right.
Yeah, so if you had something like where you're doing like apartments above and then a bunch of small businesses on the ground floor, it would be like cumulative. There's going to be more than 50 people working in that space, so then that building would need to have a shower. Is that kind of what it means?
So this is restricted to businesses with 50 employees. there are very few businesses currently in the city of Albany with 50
Right.
employees. But in the future, if and when there are more businesses in Albany with at least 50 employees within that building, this is what that would apply to. So this is a little bit anticipatory because there are so few examples of that in the current.
But what about that case where it's not like a single business, but multiple businesses sharing a building? That case where I just said, like, if you have, apartments, it's like a big, like what is expected to be built in where the Albany Bowl, isn't that supposed to be apartments on the top, and then residents on the top, and then a number of different businesses underneath? So in that case, like each single business wouldn't, but collectively, there would be more than 50 people working on that site.
Oh, but maybe, example on Solano Avenue is that a professional building. Which I think is actually in Berkeley, but there's probably 50 people working in that building.
Currently, the standards that we're looking at do not consider that scenario. So it would be for a single business with 50 employees. It's a question as to whether we should change that, and I think that's certainly in the realm of possibilities here. But in the current standards, this only applies to buildings and businesses with at least 50 employees.
Can I ask a follow-on question? I assume that this is dealt with in zoning all the time in terms of the number of bathrooms that are available. And it's done, I'm assuming, with sort of the capacity of the building, not
Like
by business.
By business, individual
Yeah.
business, yeah. That's what we'll talk about it when we go to the discussion, but it makes more sense, it's like,
Okay, so how about we see if there's any audience members who have questions or comments to add?
If you wish to speak on this item, please use the raise your hand feature.
So we're not popular tonight. Okay, so
contentious topics.
Back to us for discussion now.
Well, Judy had a discussion topic that she wanted to initiate first, so I would.
And if I may, I have an example of this.
Yeah, the topic that I want to talk about is the density of bikes being parked in a building that has 50 or more employees on the sidewalk, and how those bikes are going to get from the bike trail across the sidewalk. Will there be signage? Will there be social pressure? Will there be an expectation that you dismount your bicycle and walk it to the rack rather than ride it to the rack? And I would like discussion to focus mostly on how the regulations or this ordinance could be written in a way that would encourage that kind of behavior.
I will say that on the Berkeley campus where I worked for many years, it's an issue because there's students pouring out of buildings and students coming in, and there are bikes and there's bike racks near the buildings, and I think you would not see that kind of density of people anywhere in Albany, but you have to be careful, in a situation like that if you're a pedestrian, because there's just bikes kind of zooming around everywhere.
So you specifically called out buildings with 50 or more, but I think this is an issue for all temporary bike and long-term bike parking in terms
No,
of.
I'm doing it in regards to the ordinance is being written, which only relates to this particular topic. So it's new projects being built. It's certainly true everywhere, but we're talking about new projects. So that's what I'm talking about.
Well, good question then would be, do these regulations for location and spacing of temporary bike racks apply to all temporary bike parking racks that are erected in Albany, or just for new construction?
Can you repeat the question?
Do the City of Albany bicycle parking standards only apply for new construction, or would they also apply for the erection of temporary bike parking, say on Solano, for an existing building?
The intention is for them to apply only to new construction. There's obviously, as we're developing these standards for ourselves as the City of Albany for the first time, there is probably an interest in thinking about, looking at these standards as something that was developed specifically to the City of Albany that we could then expand or expound upon to the rest of the city, and as it applies to other infrastructure, but the intention is for them to only apply to new construction.
All right.
Anybody else?
I would just follow up and say that I think there will be an opportunity with the Uptown Solano plan to talk about ways to encourage people to dismount, and perhaps some signage or on sidewalk marking that could help encourage folks not to bicycle on the sidewalk.
Are you talking about in regards to a new building project or just in general? That, or both?
Well, I guess I'm assuming that I'm not expecting a lot of new construction that has business with 50 or more employees. So I'm thinking outside of that box.
Just to clarify, this is
This is for new buildings.
new buildings. It doesn't need to be 50 or more employees for short-term parking requirements.
Right.
The ordinance establishes one short-term space per 1,500 square feet of floor area. It does not specify whether those spaces would be on the sidewalk or not. They could be on the street. So that they just have to be within 50 feet of the entrance of the building per the regulations that we're talking about tonight.
Anyone else? I have a few comments. First of all, regarding the building code issue, I just want to provide a little background. That is an issue that arose because of the Altadena and Palisades fires in LA County. There's so much rebuilding that they're going to have to do. The developers had a concern that because we tend to just update local building codes and state building codes as federal standards change or standards that are promulgated by these national organizations, they wanted to freeze on the building codes just to make it easier to do all this building. So, that really concerns structures, not, bike racks. So you'd think we'd have a little more wiggle room, to change what's going on with bike racks. On another point, I'm just thinking about the bike racks that strollers and rollers have put up on the streets on Solano that look like colored bicycles and they're powder coated. I really like those because as a cyclist, when I do need to lock my bike with a U-lock, the fact that they're round, not very big around, really makes it easier to use a U-lock. So I see here in item 4, rack materials and construction. Square steel tubing is recommended to improve resistance to cutting. Round tubing is generally less secure and not preferred. I'm just curious, has anyone ever cut through one of the bike racks on Solano? I'm not sure how big a concern it is, but something to keep in mind. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. And also, item 4A2 reads, a hot dip galvanized stainless steel or powder-coated finish is recommended. Powder coating for sure, but it's not clear from the sentence. Are you talking about bike racks made of stainless steel or bike racks that are coated with stainless steel? I don't think you can coat metal with stainless steel. That just needs to be clarified. I don't think you can make bike racks out of stainless either because it's too expensive. But maybe I'm wrong. I just had a question.
Can I answer your first question?
Sure.
To my knowledge, none of the bike racks have ever been demolished in any way other than being crushed by motor vehicles.
I've seen it. There are a couple of those out there. You see them when you walk the streets. My other comment, and we discussed this earlier, is there has been some concern in big cities like New York City of e-bike batteries catching on fire inside apartments, causing serious fires. You know, and also when we fly on airplanes, we're supposed to keep our laptops with us as carry-on and not put them in checked baggage. So I don't know if there needs to be some distinction made between bikes and e-bikes or some fire code regulations that would make bike areas less prone to starting fires, but it's something I wanted to mention. And that's it for me.
Michael, I would respond to the e-bike question about battery fires. Creating secure places for people to comfortably leave their bikes outside of, say, their apartment in a development goes a long way towards improving safety and health of people in the building. Recharging a lithium battery in a separate room that is away from living space is one of the key aspects of preventing the harm of lithium battery fires.
Yeah, I agree. So I just think there needs to be some acknowledgement of making relatively fire-safe structures for charging. It's not a problem with cars for some reason. I think they're different, although there are certainly accidents when EVs catch on fire, but that's only after really a severe impact accident. Anyway, I just think it's something we should do.
I'm not sure it needs to be written into these requirements. It's sort of implicit in the thinking behind it.
The thinking behind what?
The need for separate secure bike parking facilities in new development.
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings about it one way or the other. I just wanted to raise it as an issue. You know, in my experience, secure bike facilities in big buildings tend to be in parking garages that are all concrete anyway, so it's be hard to catch anything on fire other than, you know, something that's on the bikes themselves.
So I brought up in the questions period this idea of the clearance into AV, and I'm suggesting that it's hard to conform to clearance that doesn't suggest a standard size bike. I don't have good verbiage.
There's the visual that Ben showed for the standard bike or the long bike dimensions is on the soon under it, under 3B or
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
under 3A and 3B. It gives the standard dimensions. So to your point, I think just referencing that spacing includes not just the rack, but the bike next to the rack. Reference the specific.
So that's specifically under, as Ben mentioned, under long-term bike parking.
Right, but I'm just saying to your point of including the bike park next to it, we could say the assumed standard bike dimensions next to it has to be included in that clearance.
Yes, that could work.
Not a whoever parks there in the future has to meet it. It's that we're going to calculate that clearance with a standard bike attached to the rack to address that.
Can you put the components of the ordinance back up?
The components,
Like where it says like what,
Can pull
it
up.
was like where it was like greater than or equal to 20% of parking spots need to be whatever.
from the slide deck.
Yeah, from your slide deck.
Give me 1 second. what you're looking for?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, so where it says greater than 20%, oh, that's just for long-term spaces. There's nothing about short-term parking.
That's correct.
Okay, I see. That's like more if there's like a box or kind of like a, how would it look different if it would just be like a bigger space? That's what,
Well, so for the long-term spaces, there are requirements that they'd have to be in a secure
okay,
inside facility or in kind of a personalized
yeah,
bike, box.
box, okay. So I guess it's to your point then of like the short-term parking, you don't know if in that spot there's gonna be like a long tail bike or standard size bike. Yeah, I see.
Or a bike with a trailer that
Yeah,
that is
yeah, yeah.
wider, yeah.
So that 6 feet clearance is kind of assuming that it's a standard size bike parking there. I can see that being an issue because I almost am always riding a bike that is not a standard size bike, and I often have a hard time finding bike parking spots because I stick out too far. And so then I end up having to park in weird places.
Now, does that only apply to parking lots that are perpendicular to the sidewalk? What about
Yeah, where,
parking spots that are parallel?
well, it kind of depends on the clearance, but yeah, I don't want to block the sidewalk, and so sometimes I can't park in the bike rack because I'll be blocking the sidewalk, or I'll be taking up the whole space, for people. Even if it's parallel, it's like I'm just taking up the whole area, and then I feel like I'm blocking people. So I don't know. Yeah, exactly. So then I don't know where to park. But I don't know how you solve that problem. You can't really, I guess. Yeah, then it does cause the issue that Judy brings up of like bikes then blocking pedestrian access ways. It's if there's not, and we are seeing more and more long tails and like, bigger bikes. I don't know if anybody wants to comment further on that, but
I'd like to comment on this slide.
yeah.
This slide shows a bike parked at a bike rack with a chain lock around the frame only. This is not recommended. Please use a U-lock or a hardened steel folding lock and try to do your frame in at least one wheel.
I'll also add that in here it says don't use paint, but those look so nice with the paint on them.
Well, to clarify, we did update the regulations to explicitly not say don't use paint because we received that feedback. So powder coating, which these are, I believe,
Oh, okay.
is now acceptable for the regulations.
Good. We have to think of the aesthetics.
And encouraged, yeah.
The aesthetics of it all. My other thing was just commenting on that commuter amenities. I would suggest that instead of having it be all businesses with more than 50 employees, have it related more to the capacity, like the expected employee capacity of the building, regardless of individual business size. So like in the case of, where there's multiple businesses on the ground floor, if that is exceeding 50 expected employees, then that building would have a shower that's accessible to the employees.
Anything else? More comments?
So I think I was one of the persons who objected to a purely chain link enclosure for long-term bike parking, and it was more about weather exposure than security. Certainly indoors, a chain link enclosure to separate a long-term bike parking facility seems reasonable, as long as it's not off somewhere where somebody can attack it with a cutoff saw. But outside, walls or ceiling of chain link is just not okay for a long-term bike park facility. That's not somewhere where people feel comfortable leaving a bike.
But isn't there something in here about it has to be protected from sun and all of that?
I was reading, where would that be?
I don't know, it's somewhere.
I have a paper copy.
Oh, and long-term. It says, wait, I feel like I saw it somewhere.
It says a secure location. It does not say indoors.
It says shielded from rain and direct sunlight.
Where is that?
2B1.
2B1,
2B1.
yeah.
2B, I'm sorry, I'm on 5. Let's go back to 2. 2B, long-term, okay,
Shall be indoors or
Right.
covered and shielded from rain and
Great.
direct sunlight.
okay.
So then the chain link thing doesn't matter.
Well, but the converse is true that if you're looking for an inexpensive material to use inside, then chain link is acceptable. Me,
Yeah.
do you agree?
Oh, yeah, I'm saying that it would be okay outside also if it was like covered and some other, maybe like a overhang from the roof or whatever.
Yeah, there's a balance there somewhere.
And just to clarify, so under security 5BV, that is the chain link reference. So it reads, not rely solely on chain link enclosures unless supplemented with controlled entry, surveillance, and reinforced perimeters.
Right. So the word solely helps there. That's great.
So that could be, for example, a building where there's a security guard with TV cameras that it's being monitored often enough that somebody can't come in and break in. Those BART lockers work pretty well, the ones at El Cerrito Plaza. You kind of check
Bike
all-
link lockers?
Yeah, they check all the boxes. I don't know how expensive they are, but. Okay, any more comments? All right, moving right along then. So we are at item 4.3, appreciation for past commissioner, Julian Baldwin. Hi, Julian, maybe you're out there somewhere. So let me just, I'm not sure what the protocol is when the subject is not here, but I can just I'll read the statement of appreciation. City of Albany Transportation Commission Resolution Number 2025-05, Resolution of Appreciation to Julian Baldwin for his service on the Transportation Commission. Whereas Julian Baldwin was appointed to the Transportation Commission in January 2025, and whereas Baldwin served as a member of the commission for 7 months, serving in the high school student seat appointed by the City Council as a whole, and whereas Baldwin consistently contributed thoughtful input to commission discussions, offering perspective into how transportation policies and improvements affect Albany's students and families, and whereas Baldwin was a vocal and active participant in commission meetings, demonstrating confidence and leadership in what can be a challenging role for a high school student, and whereas before departing to begin his first year of college, Baldwin showed foresight and commitment to the commission by encouraging student applicants for the position to ensure continuity of representation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Transportation Commission expresses its sincere appreciation to Julian Baldwin for his service to the City of Albany and wishes him success in his future academic and professional endeavors. Passed and adopted by the Transportation Commission of the City of Albany at its meeting on the 25th day of September 2025.
I move that we adopt the resolution.
Why not?
Roll call. Commissioner Hiley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Of course.
Commissioner McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ugalde, Commissioner Zuba,
Yes.
and Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now.
Thanks, Julian.
Yes, thank you, Julian. Before we move on to, perhaps as part of the announcements, we need to have a discussion for our combined November-December meeting, which tentatively might be on December 4th. I don't know if we're all have got our calendars locked in that far in advance, but we can discuss.
Based on the responses I got, that seemed okay, but I didn't hear from everyone, so this would be a good last opportunity to weigh in.
And this is why I ran out to my car, because I don't have check my calendar. But I think it's good.
Okay, well, we'll note it, confirm it on the next meeting, but plan to hold December 4th on your calendars. That'd be
Sorry, we will have one more meeting before this combined meeting. Okay, that's it for me. Any other announcements?
My one update, I think, was just to note that I believe construction on Marin Avenue pavement Phase 2 begins next week. So that's going to be a big project. They're starting with some storm drain improvements over the next few weeks, but looking at like a year of work before it's complete. So.
And I'll just add that there's more information on the City of Albany website for that project. So I believe, yeah, major construction begins on Monday. Allison sent us some notes that I jotted down over there.
Phase 1 is on schedule and completed.
Phase 1 was the segment from Cornell to Masonic. That was completed, and then we were awaiting some East Bay Mud pipe work before continuing. The notes we got from Allison were that it starts on Monday and it's going to start at Ventura moving westward. And yeah, there is a project page on the website for updates there, and I think a way to subscribe to get regular updates on the project.
Anything else?
Sure. We are currently working on our business engagement on the Solano concept, Solano discussion. So that's the piece that we're actively working on. We are going to be looking to bring that discussion to the commission next month. We're looking to bring the ATP Phase 2 that the commission discussed and made recommendation to City Council next month as well. So they're both moving in parallel. We haven't yet brought what you guys discussed to Council, but need to do that. And then we'll be looking to have the Phase 3 projects and priorities discussion either towards the end of this year or early next year. We're still figuring out that schedule. Potentially, if we keep on schedule, we might repurpose the now scheduled December 4th time slot like we've been doing with earlier phases, but to be finalized on that.
Okay, so if there is no other discussion, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.